Hi, this is Michael Banta from ProvenGamer.com, and I'm getting a wonderful chance to get an interview with Edmund McMillen.
Hello.
Well, he's the creator of such games as Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac, as most of you probably know. But he also made us. What other games have you produced in the past?
Aside from those, I think the game I'm most known for is Gish, which was one of my first games back in the day, and I've done a ton of freeware titles, which I'm compiling into the Basement Collection, which will be released soon.
I actually wanted to ask you one of the first questions right off the bat. I've been really excited for it. Could you give us some details on what the Basement Collection is?
Yeah, it's actually there's so much stuff in it that I have a hard time remembering. I actually did a press release where I said that there were 8 games in the collection when there are 9. So I'm to the point where I don't even remember what's in here. Okay, so I'm gonna go down my own list. The Basement Collection is like it's like a revamp of a bunch of freeware titles that I've done for like the past 9 years that I've worked on games, and those include Timefuck, Ether, Spewer, Gray Matter, Triachnid, Meat Boy, Coil, and 2 secret games that are locked, so I won't say what they are. But most of the games have been updated with a whole bunch of new actual content. Like Timefuck actually has a whole, almost a sequel inside of it. It has another 33 level full chapter with a full story and everything else. And Ether has a whole bunch of extras and has a lot of new music and art. And Spewer has new levels, new improved art, improved physics, improved controls. Everything's been improved and updated. It has a bunch of functionality with Steam, so it has a bunch of achievements, but it also has a ton of like behind the scenes stuff, like all the development sketches I had laying around for all the games involved, all the character sketches I had around, a bunch of like interviews, Q and A's, and some of the coolest stuff is extras that I was given by the guys who made Indie Game the movie, and they're actually about 15 minutes of unseen footage from the movie that was edited together and polished up specifically for this collection, so it's pretty awesome. And aside from that, a bunch of other videos, and then there are actually 8 locked extras. So whenever you beat a game, you would get to unlock a new large amount of content, and the 8 extras are all like pretty substantial. 2 of them are, of course, the games, and then the 6 remaining ones are like full comics and stories and sketchbooks and a bunch of other stuff that I've accumulated over the years that I polished up for specifically for the collection. And it also features a ton of like music, like all the music in all the games except Triachnid. The full soundtracks are all there in the free digital soundtrack, as well as like 10 plus remixes, fan remixes that were submitted recently by fans. It's a substantial amount of stuff. I'm actually looking at the file size now, and I believe it'll go as large as a gig of content.
I liked how you mentioned the soundtrack. Is it going to be like digital that you could add to
Mm-hmm.
iTunes or whatever?
We're actually one of the first games on Steam to do in-game functionality where there's actually an icon for the soundtrack in-game when you click it, and it'll actually pop up the folder with all the music in it that you can easily get to. Because usually the other games, when you have a downloadable soundtrack, it'll just be like, go find it. You've got to search through,
Yeah.
folders and folders and folders on Steam in order to find the soundtrack. And we made it pretty easy for you to just pop it open and easily take it out and add it to your iTunes or whatever else you want.
Because, like, when you mentioned the soundtracks, that also reminds me, I'm like a hardcore gamer. And Danny B made the music for Binding of Isaac. Did he make it for Super Meat Boy?
Yep, he actually did most of the music for all the games in the collection. He did all the music for Meat Boy. He did all the music for Spewer. He did all the music for Gray Matter, and he actually did a full new soundtrack for Ether. So this is on never before heard, Danny B tracks. So the soundtrack for Ether he redid, and then one of the secret games he redid the soundtrack for that as well, which has never been heard. And then he made 2 exclusive tracks for the collection for the menu system. So he's done a lot of work on all my, really good titles and put a lot of effort into the collection as well and making a lot of new music and stuff for it.
I was just wondering because, like, I really love video game music, and Binding of Isaac is in my top three of favorite soundtracks of all time. And I was just like, how well do you know the guy? Because he makes some great music.
I know him really well. I've been friends with him and been working with him for what 90 since 2008. So almost 5 years, beginning of 2008. But yeah, I mean, I know him really well. Like we work really really well together. I've worked on more games with him than I think I've worked with anybody else.
When he does write the music, are you involved? Like, hey, I would like it to sort of sound like this, or do you just trust him like full heartedly?
I usually what I'll do is I'll send him a screenshot of what I'm going for, and then I'll send him a bunch of adjectives and just descriptions on like how I want things to feel and that sort of stuff too, and what kind of like I'm not a really musical person, so I don't have the vocabulary to say like what instruments I think would be perfect or whatever else. He knows what he's doing, and all I do is give him the kind of vibe I'm going for and give him some visuals to go with, and then he makes the music. Even there's been times where he's made the music and I've actually like customized stuff around the music. Like in Isaac, I don't know how far you've gotten, but in the expansion, in the Wrath of the Lamb expansion, there's a library room, and in the library there's a track, and there's a library track, and he made that for the library. But when he sent it to me, I instantly saw it being used for the very end of the game in the chest, that track inspired me to write the ending the way I did. So there's times where he'll actually give me something, and I can use it to be inspired and do a bunch of cool stuff in the game. Same thing, it's worked for Meat Boy too. Like he'll put down a really cool vibe, and I'll kind of want to go with it.
When you mention Wrath of the Lamb DLC, are there going to be any more plans, or are you done with Binding of Isaac?
I'm done with the Flash version of Binding of Isaac because I can't actually do anything else to it. Wrath of the Lamb expansion, I didn't really talk about it much, but it was incredibly hard to do and really really frustrating. There were a lot of limitations in Flash, and I was running into them. We were running into them constantly. It got to a point where we pushed the collection back. Like we actually worked on the collection, I think, for maybe 5 or 6 months, which was like almost twice the amount of time we worked on the original for, and it was mostly due to technical issues. The FLA was becoming so bloated that we couldn't export things. It would literally take like 2 or 3 minutes to export something to just test, and then most of the time it would crash or become corrupted, and we would lose like a week's worth of work constantly. It was pretty awful, and like as you probably know, I don't know if you were there for the release, but we were constantly updating because when you make a game like this that has so many variables, whenever you push something down, like whenever you push a bug down, it pops up somewhere else and you can't find it. Like there's no way for me to tell if this one item combined with this other item in this room will fuck the game up because I can't generate that variable no matter how many times I play. So we'll think we've squished something, but really it's popped up, somewhere else, and then somebody else online finds it, tells us about it, then we try to squish it there and it pops up somewhere else. And it's just gotten to the point where we have this giant ball of Isaac that is just like duct taped together, and it's as stable as it can be right now. There are a few things that we'd like to update on it that we're going to try to update, but we can't add anything else without breaking it. But the good thing about that is I've been talking to a publisher who wants to remake Isaac for consoles as well as PC next year, and if that happens, it would mean you'd have the Binding of Isaac, the Wrath of the Lamb, and then a whole new expansion, as well as everything will be updated. Everything will look different, sound different, play different, have really great performance, support controllers, new endings, new characters, new everything, and it'll probably be about the same price as what you're paying for Wrath of the Lamb plus Isaac now. So if that happens, that would be really awesome. It's really early right now, so I can't say for sure, but hopefully I'll be able to say something in like the next month or two, knowing what kind of deals they get console-wise and stuff. But it's something I'd love to do, and I'm pretty hands-off with it, but I basically got like a whole other expansion that I wanted to do for Isaac that I can't do anymore. But since these people want to pick it up, and it's not going to be in Flash anymore, then they could do the expansion as well.
Could I ask what that expansion is, or are you keeping it secret until you find out more info?
Yeah, there's no point in spoiling it just in case it doesn't happen, then just have a bunch of people that would be disappointed, but it should be, pretty substantial, like Wrath of the Lamb was, like a substantial amount of content that would update the game, and probably another final boss, as I tend to do.
Yeah, like I didn't have that much information when I first played The Binding of Isaac, So every time I beat, I'm like, wow, that game wasn't that long. And then the next time I played it, there was like 3 new chambers that I'm like, what? And then it seems like every time I play it, it gets a little bit longer for me and harder.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the goal going in. I wanted to make a roguelike. I love roguelikes. And the one thing about roguelikes is usually when you beat it, it's over. And I thought it would be cool to use that kind of formula and just taper it with like a difficulty curve where, easy mode basically only gives you 3 chapters, and then medium mode gives you 4 chapters, and then hard mode would give you 6 chapters, but not in the literal like I choose my difficulty, but more like the more you play, the more you'll get better. Yeah, so the better you get, the game knows you're getting better and will try to adjust itself to your skill level and kind of unfold. Like the more you play, the deeper it gets. I thought that was really neat, and that's one of the things I think I'm most proud of with the game. I think I did that well.
When you mentioned the difficulty curve in Isaac, it reminded me I've been wanting to ask you. This is going to sound a little bit embarrassing, and I know a lot of other people wonder this besides me. Why was Super Meat Boy so hard?
It was hard because it's important for things to be hard for them to feel good when you accomplish something. The game isn't actually hard in the old school sense. Like if you go play a game like Ghosts and Goblins, that game
Oh
is
gosh.
hard, but it's frustrating. And we tried to avoid the frustration factor. We tried to make it so you didn't feel that defeated by the game. Like you didn't have to go, all the way back 10 levels to start when you've died once. Like we made the game pretty easy in the frustration factor department. And we also my goal wasn't to make some like crazy impossible game. Like I said it similar to Isaac where like you've got the main light world, and I think most people that play it can beat the light world. Like I have faith that people can do it. The dark world, on the other hand, is there for people who want to go above and beyond. And I kind of wanted to have this again, like 2 difficulties, easy, or I wouldn't say easy, medium and hard. And I didn't want there to just be some chooser. I wanted you to actually, if you felt like playing a harder level when you got really confident early on, you could go and do that. You could play Dark World. If not, you just wanted to felt you could complete the light world and feel good about the fact that you've completed Super Meat Boy and be fine with it. But if you wanted more, you could go through the dark world and do that, and that would have a substantial ending as well and make you feel like you've accomplished even more. Or you can go even further than that. You can 100% the game, and people did that, and I like that. I like that option that you have, that you don't feel like you have to do the really hard stuff, but it's there if you want to.
Because like it's sad to say I'm a really hardcore gamer and I always make sure I finish stuff. I've never beaten Super Meat Boy. I'm stuck on a certain boss.
What boss?
The boss for Hell.
Yeah, it's
And
not the best boss in the world.
yeah, recently you posted a video of a world record run of Super Meat Boy,
Yeah,
and I timed it. He beat that boss in about 40 seconds, and I've spent maybe an hour or two trying to beat it.
it's all
Been
patterns. Like that boss is all patterns.
yeah,
He always does the same thing.
because like it's about like the frustration. You say you the way you did it was perfect. Like the frustration, it was just enough to keep me going. But when I finally beat a level, it makes me feel really great and just wants to make me keep going. And I thought you did a really good job on that.
We also tried to make it there's a lot of reward. Not only do you feel good when you beat it, but you also get a cool little visual replay of your struggles to like remind you how far you came when started, and all the unlockables and stuff like that too gives you something more than just a little digital badge. When you've done something hard, you actually get a character that you can play with and experience more of the game with. We really tried to go all out to reward the player for doing something that was hard.
Yeah. It also, when you were talking about the replay, it shows like all of your little meat boys running all at the same time from every try, and I thought that was a neat little feature. Like you can see where you screwed up every time, all at once.
Yeah, that was all Tommy too.
I've never played the first Meat Boy. Is the gameplay any similar?
You'll see. It's in the collection. It's
Okay.
that was one of the games where I was like, I don't want to add this because like if you played Meat Boy, you're gonna be like, oh Jesus, this isn't even close. But you'll kind of see where it kind of came from, and it's not horrible. Like it's still, I mean, it was a very popular Flash game back in the day. That's one of the reasons why we were able to make Super Meat Boy is because so many people were like all about Meat Boy. Meat Boy was one of the first games where my cousin called me and said, "Hey, I heard Meat Boy music coming from my roommate's room, and I look in there and he's playing it." And it was like, I think the first time where a game that I had worked on got so big online that people were calling me and telling me that they knew people who were playing it and they thought it was cool. And I knew that it was a big deal. Like I knew that people really liked the character and they liked the difficulty and they liked the enemy and they liked the whole kind of basic story. And when me and Tommy had the option to make a console game, we totally knew we would do Super Meat Boy because that was the most popular game that I had made, and it seemed like the least risky first console game. Like we wanted to do something that seemed to already be appealing to people, so we didn't invest 2 years of our life and all of our money to fail, and that's kind of why we did it.
Question I wanted to ask about all of your games like Isaac and Super Meat Boy. Sorry about the cat. Were you the one that came up with the creative designs for all the characters and monsters and enemies in all of the games?
Yeah, I do all the character design.
Is there anything that gave you inspiration for like, hey, that looks cool, maybe I could do my own spin on it?
Like for Isaac?
Oh, for any of your games.
Yeah,
but
like
Isaac, because I know that one the most.
Yeah, like for Isaac, I was inspired a lot by, I mean, it doesn't sound fun in the slightest, but kind of anything that had to do with like child neglect or, child deformities, and that sort of stuff. Like just the idea of like my wife had like a Star magazine, and in the back of the Star magazine there was a ad for kids in other countries, third world countries that have cleft palates, and it's just like this crying face with a hair lip and screaming at you on the back of the magazine, and it made enough of an impression for me to make Monstro. And I think it kind of just went from there. Like it's definitely got a People Under the Stairs vibe. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but it just popped into my head when I was thinking about character designs. Like the idea of like a shitload of half dead, neglected children in a basement, and how would they look? And I like the idea of like circus freaks and conjoined twins and deformities and disabilities, because I always thought those things were really unique. There's a certain beauty to things that look gross to other people, but I mean really to me they look so interesting. And when something's interesting, it's usually pretty beautiful in its own way. And I think that's kind of where I went with Isaac. I was just trying to come up with really unique looking creatures, unique looking things.
The way you're describing about being really messed up sort of images and like designs, you seem to make them seem adorable, even though they're incredibly messed up, like little kids with no eyeballs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's probably just me, but like, there's a certain uniqueness in that. There's a certain beauty and extreme flaws, and I like making those kind of things cute and accessible, I guess. I don't know. It's also fun to draw. I like drawing like things that are stitched up. I like drawing things with a lot of like skin folds and flaps and umbilical cords and all that good stuff. It's fun to draw, so I usually gravitate towards it.
You're lucky you're in a gaming business, or that might seem a lot more messed up.
Yeah, probably.
But do you have a favorite character that you've made?
I like a lot of my characters. I think I actually tend to like my characters more than I like the games. But like I like Dr. Fetus a lot. I like the Duke of Flies a lot. I think those are like my two kind of standout characters that I like. I really like it when I tend to make my characters vague enough for people to, like other creative people to take and do stuff with, and I really enjoy when people take my characters that are not completely developed and kind of give them a little bit of character and like do little animations or drawings and stuff with them that put them in situations that they think how they might react. And I like that a lot. And people seem to use Duke and Dr. Fetus a lot in those, and they're pretty funny. I like. I mean, there's an upcoming character in Super Meat Boy the game for iOS, and that I really like a lot on paper, and I have a feeling I'll like him a lot more when he's actually in game. But I like a lot of my characters. There's some I like less, but for the most part, I think I like almost all the designs in Isaac, and I definitely like all the designs in Meat Boy. I definitely fall in love with the characters more than I fall in love with the games. I think my feelings towards them last a lot longer than my feelings towards the games, because I tend to just kind of I get over the games after a certain amount of time.
Well, when you mentioned the iOS, what games are moving to different ports?
Well, Super Meat Boy the game is actually going to be a new game. I have to figure out a better way to talk about it because it's too confusing to say a remake. It's I guess I should say it's a sequel, but it's not, because it's kind of like a re-envisioning of the original game. It's a whole new game. Everything's 100% new. It's going to basically have a new story, new characters, new look, new music, new engine, new gameplay. It won't play like Super Meat Boy as you remember, but I think you'll see the similarity. But it's basically like we wanted to make a touch game as a challenge to ourselves, and we started it a long time ago on paper and some prototypes, and it seemed to work really well. And we decided to just see if we could do it, and we started it a few months ago, and the engine's almost done, and we'll start full-time development in about a month.
When you first started on Newgrounds, do you think that your popularity as a game developer would become this big?
No, not at all. I mean, back then it wasn't an option. Like, that stuff has just changed so much, like in the past 5 years especially. Like, everything changed. Like, when I started on Newgrounds in like 1999, 2000, which was actually the same time where Tommy started, we were both kind of making kind of games, barely games, like dress-up games and minor interactive to set up high score type games. And then by 2003, I was working on Gish with Chronic Logic, which was my first introduction to the independent game scene, which was at the time really tiny. Like literally maybe 30, 40 people actively, making games in this small group, submitting to the IGF and stuff, which was around then. And by 2008, though, it was booming, and like you were starting to get options like Xbox Live had started on the original Xbox, and Gish was actually going to be one of the first games on it, but the company ended up falling apart, so we weren't able to do it. But that was kind of like the first time the doors started opening up, and we started getting. I remember having a few meetings with a bunch of different companies that they were interested in indie games, bringing indie games to the mainstream and giving indie games options. Because before that, all we were doing was just selling them off of our websites. Like back in the day, like our best sales day with Gish in 2004 when it finally released, we sold about 120 copies. That was our best sales day. And back then, that was considered a huge success. That was a huge deal to sell that many games. And like now, on Steam, there was a day when Super Meat Boy sold 140,000 copies in a day. So things have changed. Like things have changed dramatically in recent years. And since Steam came around, honestly, I mean, Steam has carried this. Like Steam is one of the reasons why indie games are really big right now. And of course, Xbox Live helped this as well. And there's been a lot of really big Xbox Live games. But I think a lot of developers are realizing that it's not necessarily worth all the effort put in to when you could just release on Steam and make more. And because of that, like there are just so many more people because of Flash, because of Steam, because of the Humble Bundle and all this other stuff. Independents just have a lot of options, and it's become really popular. But back when I started, it was just like I was doing this for free. Like the first 10 games I made no money off of. I was just doing them for fun. And it never thought in my mind like people are going to give a shit about anything that I'm doing. I was just doing it because it was really fun for me to do, and my friends were doing it. Like the people that I looked up to, my peers were doing it. And I guess things just changed, and I ended up here.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, because a lot of people on Newgrounds they just release stuff for fun, and I was gonna ask you if that was your original intention.
Hmm. Yeah, like quite literally, like the first 10 games I think I made on Newgrounds, it was before sponsorships. Sponsorships weren't even. I don't think that sponsorships appeared until 2006, and that's when you could start making money off of Flash games. Back then, you could get like $1,000, $2,000 for a sponsorship, and back then, the way I was living, that was a lot of money. And by 2008, you could get as much as 10 grand for a sponsorship, and that was a considerable amount of money. And in 2008, I made like 6 of my most prominent Flash games, and I made enough money to save up to make Meat Boy. That's how I was able to do it. Like I was able to, probably make 45, 50 grand that year, the most money I've ever made, and I made it all off of my games, and I saved all that money for like the next 3 years to just live off of. I didn't start Meat Boy for another year, but that was the money I lived off in order to make Meat Boy, and I ran out of money.
What got you into making the games originally back then? Like, what was the thing that made you say, I want to make video games?
Um, I didn't really know I was making games. I didn't even think about it until I met Chronic Logic, until I started working on Gish. And I think the moment where I thought, oh my god, I need to do this. Like I can make something special. Like maybe my voice, matters. Was the first time I ever showed my game in an IGF, and that was in 2004 or no 2003, no 2004, yeah 2004, right before Gish came out, and we got into the finals, and I had people from all over coming over and playing Gish, and it was just the greatest experience. Like it was one of the most memorable and greatest feelings that I remember having, and I was feeling great. It was just really, really like motivating to see all these people enjoying, something that I had made, and I just felt so validated. Like you kind of there's a major isolation involved in making games, making anything independent. We were just stuck in a room with 1 or 2 people, or even by yourself, and you all think your game's really cool, but there's a part of you that thinks like. It's just kind of like your mom saying you're the most handsome boy. Like, you kind of know that maybe you're lying to yourself a little bit, and maybe what you're doing isn't that good. But then having all these people and seeing them smile and seeing them laugh and seeing them enjoy something that you made was just so moving. And that kind of hooked me, and I thought, but I mean, honestly, part of me thought, like, not many people are doing this. That gives me a chance. Like, I feel like I have a chance here. I feel like it's kind of a level playing field. We're all starting at the same spot, and I could have a chance. Like I could have a chance to do things and actually have control over them at this point. And that was the cincher for me. That sealed the deal. And I thought I got to make games. Like this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I did from then on.
Do you have any goals for your future as a game developer? Like, seeing how well you're doing right now, do you have like a certain mindset of what you want to accomplish?
Not as specific as I used to. In a lot of ways, like winning the IGF in 2005 was really depressing because, like I said, like I started in 2003 and my goal was like, I'm going to, maybe in 10 years I'll win the IGF. And then the next year I won the IGF. And back then I had no other place to go. And it was like an amazingly horrible experience to achieve something so big at such an early point when you had no other options. Like there was nothing bigger than that. There were no other options. There was no Steam. There was no console deals. There was nothing like that. And I was depressed for a really long time. And I think I kind of learned to set my goals in a more vague manner. Like I have vague goals now. Like I have things that I would like to accomplish, and those things may never be achieved. And I try to keep it like that so I don't get discouraged again like I did in the past. And I mean, basically, like I want to get really good at making games. I don't think I'm that good yet, but I think I'll get better with time. And I hope by, the time I'm 50 years old, 60 years old, I can start making games that I consider to be great. really great games that could maybe really move someone, or move someone emotionally in a really dramatic way, or just make a really perfectly designed game, something that I would consider almost perfect. um, I don't think I'll ever be there, but it's something that I strive for because I want that kind of unachievable goal. Other than that, I don't have much specifically that I'd like. I have a lot of games I'd like to do, and I'd like to have a lot of fun making them. Everything else I've achieved. I just want to continue. I want to continue to grow and get better, and you know, that's basically my goal. I want to get better and make more games.
Well, if somebody listening wanted to go back to your older stuff, like even your dress up stuff, is all of your original content still on Newgrounds?
Yeah, it is. It's all archived there. My my handle on or my username on Newgrounds is Blue Baby. So if you just go to Newgrounds and search Blue Baby, you can basically see everything I've submitted for the past 13 years, which is a lot of stuff. A lot of it's pretty bad too.
Blue Baby was actually something that I had on like a list of what I wanted to ask you. And I've heard like it's on other games besides Isaac. Like, is there a meaning behind it, or is it just your username so you went with
No,
it?
so before I made games, I made comics, and I did those independently as well. And I did that all through high school. And I did a series of comics called "This Is a Cry for Help," and one of the reoccurring comic strips was called "Dead Baby Dress Up," and the blue baby was like the mascot of everything. It was just a round-headed blue baby with X eyes, and the blue baby's been in almost every game I've made. He's hidden somewhere. Not many people realize that. He's even in Gish, but Isaac was the first game where he actually appeared as a character.
Does he look the same in Isaac like he has always looked, or have you made modifications over the years?
I didn't even realize it, but I've been I put all my comics together into a compilation, and I've been attempting to get it printed into a book so I could actually finally do that. It was one of the promises I made to myself when I was 18. I said, when I eventually one day I'm going to get a publisher and they're going to publish this into a compilation book. And of course that didn't happen, but I can do it myself now, so I'm going to do it. But I found out that back then the blue baby actually had one hair. It had one curly hair. In Binding of Isaac, he has a mouth, and I just did that to make sure people understood that the blue baby is Isaac. Isaac is all the characters in the game. So I made sure he had a mouth so people didn't get confused. But on paper, he never has a mouth. It's just the X eyes. But for the most part, he's always looked like a large-headed, kind of stubby baby that was blue with X eyes.
When you mentioned your comic, what type of genre was it? Was it horror, dark comedy, comedy?
It was dark. If you could imagine like Mad Magazine, but really dark and adult. That's basically what it was.
Do you have like an idea of when you're going to print it, or is that just like one of your vague goals?
I know it's being printed now. I actually have a pretty funny story about attempting to print it. I got really excited, and I found this place that was pretty cheap that did perfect bind printing, which is like makes it look like a real book. And I talked to him for multiple months while I was editing this, because the compilation's like 220 pages plus, and it's a substantial book. And this place was all about it, and I finally get everything ready after 2 months. I submit it to them, and they gave me the bill. The bill was not that bad. And then the next day, when they start processing it, I get a rejection letter saying that they won't print it because it's obscene. Which was weird, because like, this isn't a publisher. This is a printer. Like, they have absolutely no ties to it. Like, their name never appears in the book. Their name won't ever appear on anything. Like, it was purely they just didn't like what they saw in the comic so much that they weren't going to take my thousands of dollars I was going to pay them to do their job. And it was pretty amazing. I was pretty pissed off, honestly.
That makes me want to ask, how dark and adult is it?
I don't know. I guess it's pretty dark and adult. But I guess it's as bad as it's gonna get, as it gets. I mean, I made it when I was underage, but I guess it's 18 plus reading material. But I mean, it's not like it was people having sex or anything. It was just a lot of. I mean, there was genitals roaming around the pages and a lot of really dark, gory things. But I've seen worse. But yeah, they said no, and I finally found I had to find a local printer, and I actually had to pay much more, almost double, in order to get it printed, and it's being printed now, and I think it should be finished by mid-September, and it'll go up in our shop.
Do you have a price range for that right now?
I think it's going to sell for $25.
Okay. I'll be sure to keep an update, like check that out when it comes around.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how fans of my games will respond to the comic, because it's similar in some ways, but pretty dark, much darker. I mean, I could say it's on par with the C Word. You know, it's that kind of really adult, dark, gross, weird stuff. So it's not going to be for everybody, but there are parts of it that are also light and weird and cartoony, but you know, I mostly printed it for myself, and it's a pretty limited run. So I'll actually like number it so it's more collectible and stop printing after that run's over.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask some questions about the Binding of Isaac. Like, regarding the major theme that was in Isaac with the religious tones of it, were you raised in a religious household? And if you weren't, what inspired you to use the biblical tales for your game?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and I actually went to catechism for 7 years. I stopped at confirmation because that's when I told my mom I didn't believe in the Bible, but which is a whole deal in itself. But I also had, on my dad's side of the family, they were all born-again Christians, and 2 of them are actually missionaries who would go to like Fiji and stuff and actually do some hardcore missionary work. So that side of the family were pretty hardcore. Like, they're the fire and brimstone type Christians. And I got taken aside quite a few times when I was young, and was told that I was going to go to hell because I played D&D, or had my magic cards taken away from me because they were evil, and
Oh, wow.
had a lot of really weird conversations with that side of the McMillens. And the Binding of Isaac came out of that. It came out of my, I guess, love-hate relationship with religion, and kind of my relationship with it. Like, starting out, I knew that I wanted to make a game about my relationship with religion, and how the hell do you do that? And I didn't know specifically how I would do it, but I had just a lot of images in my head, and a lot of feelings, and a lot of basic ideas and stories that I wanted to pull from, and I kind of just grabbed it at what felt correct and just went with it, and kind of enjoyed the creative ride, I guess you could say. But the majority of the inspiration came from my experiences when I was little. Like, I had one side of the family that was using religion to try to scare me into believing, and I had another side of the family who were very ritualistic with their religion. Like, the Catholic religion is very ritualistic, and a lot of the prayers and rituals are very D&D, like very old school and cool in a lot of ways. Like, I remember enjoying a lot of aspects of Catholicism. My grandma was very devout and used to do prayers of safe passage whenever we would go places, and I firmly believed when I was little that my grandma was casting a spell over the car so we would be safe, and we were always safe. And there are just some really cool aspects of religion that I really like, because they're so creative and they're so mystical and mysterious. And there are also parts of the religion that I hate, because they're so horrible and they're so abusive and manipulative. And I guess in a way, with Isaac, I got to explore that from a child's perspective, and how religion can affect a creative child in the positive and the negative. And that's basically what the story of Isaac is.
Have you had any problems with your family once that game was released?
There are a few of them who I do talk to who are pretty down to earth. There are some who are pretty far away from it. They don't understand or really know what games I make. That was the kind of beauty of it. Like, I remember being scared when I was making it, thinking this might upset the wrong people. This might have, the really wacky ones that want to kill abortion doctors and that sort of shit. So There was a part of me that worried, and I remember I was talking to Tommy about it. I mean, he wasn't involved in programming it, but he was there the whole way through, and I talked to him a lot about it, and talked to him about how part of me worried, but then the logical part of me knew that there's no way that those people would ever know Isaac exists, because those people don't go on the internet, they don't play video games, they don't research stuff. They're just, it's not, our paths will never cross, and they never have. I've never had any religious backlash whatsoever, ever, even in the slightest degree. Never, ever.
You've never gotten hate mail? The
only controversy there ever was for Isaac, legitimate controversy, was in Germany when they actually gave it a 16 plus rating for blasphemy. And it was the first game to ever get that rating for blasphemy. And the people in Germany were really pissed off about it because how can you define blasphemy? Now, I can understand why the Germans would not want to upset Jewish people and Catholics and Christians. That's understandable. And I could see why they would want to put that on a box to make sure people knew that they didn't advocate it and they believed it was blasphemous. But a lot of people got upset at the fact that the idea of blasphemy and how you define blasphemy would raise a rating for a game. And that was interesting, and it was cool that even, the topic was even discussed. It was an honor to be a part of that discussion. But other than that, there hasn't been any controversy at all. Even like with the Nintendo stuff, they did say, they basically were like, we were worried about the blasphemous content that was talked about in the German version, but they were also more worried about the idea of having a story about a mother who kills her child, with the news nowadays. I could understand, why you'd want to get away from that, but you never know. Like, I honestly think that if the remake happens, that Nintendo will warm up to it, especially after sales numbers.
Yeah. And in The Binding of Isaac, one of the playable characters, Isaac dresses up as Judas. And I've heard a story about the reason he wears that hat. Is there any truth with the connection with that?
There isn't, but it's really interesting. So there's a lot of really interesting theories that come out of the woodwork with Isaac, and one of the most fun and most interesting ones that I've heard is the fact that Judas wears a fez because Phil Fish voted against us in the IGF and betrayed us, which is a great theory. Makes perfect sense. But that wasn't my intention at all. I just wanted, I don't know there might have been some minor connection with Phil and the fez, because it seems kind of out of the blue. Why would I choose a fez for someone who is known as a betrayer to wear? So there could have been some subconscious stuff there, but I should just say yes because it sounds like such a cool story either way. But I can't say that there was like a really conscious decision, but it makes sense to me. I'm not on bad terms at all with Phil, and even if I did put that in intentionally, it would be mostly just a poke at him and not anything vicious, because the guy doesn't live the easiest life at this point, so I'm not going to push him.
We've been talking about some of the games you've made in the history of your game development. There have been games that you've helped out, like as a second hand. Could you tell us what some of those games are?
Yeah, I worked on Braid. I worked on Braid for a year. I did all the character design and animation for Braid. I've helped with a lot of different games. I helped with Fez. I've helped with a lot of games. I've helped with The Witness. It's my help isn't sometimes as much as me just giving feedback and input on stuff, but it's hard to say. Like most independent developers tend to show their early work to other people and get opinions and feedback. Like Adam Saltzman was one of the first people I sent Isaac to, and I said, "Do you think I could get money for this?" Because I was quite unsure. And he was like, "Yeah, you could sell that for $10." And I was like, "Oh shit, really?" So like, you send early builds out to other developers to get feedback, and I've been involved in a lot of games. With that, I've been involved in helping games get on console, like Spelunky, and there's everybody helps each other because you got to look out for each other when you're in this scene. Like when you're independent, you have to look out for other independent developers because it's really easy for business people and mainstream companies to really fuck you over. Very easy to take advantage of somebody who's one or two people, and that's why I think we all kind of stick together and keep our opinions within the group. I guess you get your feedback from the group.
Out of all the things that all the projects you've worked on, do you play favoritism? Like, do you have a certain favorite game that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I can't get away from the fact that Super Meat Boy is probably going to be my favorite game. I mean, it's hard for me not to. There was just so much going on. There's so many. It was a roller coaster relationship. Like my life changed dramatically through the development and release of Super Meat Boy and After Effects. Because of Super Meat Boy, I'm in a movie that was like a Sundance Film Festival winner. Like it got me everything I have now. I'm in this house because of Super Meat Boy. So it was just like, it was such a crazy hardship. It was so hard to make. It was so hard to finish. The relationship that I developed with Tommy was great. I got a best friend out of this deal. I got, a house. I got security. I got respect for my peers. And a bunch of people who really like my work. Kind of jump started everything. So it's hard for me not to say that that's my favorite game because I'm really proud of it. I think it's my best game. I put more effort into it than I've ever put into anything in my life. So. Yeah, that's definitely the one.
Whenever you do work on a project, how many guys do you usually have to make the whole game?
I usually work with one other programmer, and then I usually contract out a musician, usually Danny. Sometimes I'll hire somebody to do sound effects, and that's as far as it usually goes.
So usually it's only like 3 or 4 guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually 2, and then Danny will come in and do music when he's ready or when he's needed.
The last question before I wrap this up: out of all of the games that you've worked on, how many hours, days, and months of your life have you devoted to making video games?
Oh man, I don't even know. I get that question a lot though. Like how many hours in the day do you work? And I'm in an awesome situation to say like I don't know, but it's a lot. Like I'm not conscious of the hours. I've never ever looked at a clock and said, oh my God, I've been spending 10 hours on this. Ever in my life when I'm working on a game. It's not about that. Like, I love every minute. Even the stupid, grueling bullshit. Like, even the stupid closing, minor edits and stuff. Like, I still look back on all those experiences with fond memories because I legitimately love what I'm doing. Like, I really love it. I'm completely lost in my work. It's as fun making a game as it is playing a game. And a lot of times it really feels like that. And a lot of people are like, when they come up with, oh, it must be great to just play games all day. And you're like, yeah, you don't really know what I'm doing. But the reality of that to somebody who really enjoys making games, even though it's really hard, but I mean, some part of what makes it so great is because it's so challenging, just like Meat Boy. Like, if it's not a challenge, it's not going to be fun in the end. You're not going to feel accomplished. You're not going to feel like you've done anything. Making games is really hard. It really is. But it fills you up so much, and you feel so accomplished when you do it because it is so hard. And you get lost. You just get lost in the hours, and they just fly on by, just like if you're playing WoW or whatever. It's just like that. I sit down, I work, maybe 6 to 10 hours fly by. I'm not completely conscious of it. But Tommy and I put a god-awful amount of time into Super Meat Boy. Tommy more so. And there was a point where at the end of the development, we were literally working nonstop and getting about 5 hours of sleep, waking up and then just going back to work, where we would only get maybe 15, 20-minute breaks to eat, and we weren't leaving the house. And that was for 2 months. And that was just ungodly. Like, you felt like you're losing your mind because you're not sleeping, you're repeating the same day over and over and over again, and the pressure is just so insanely high. In a lot of ways, like, that was the one thing about Indie Game the Movie that I cringe at, because I don't want people to look at that movie and think, oh my God, these guys don't enjoy their work. Because I think, at least, especially from Tommy's perspective, it looks like he's not having a good time. But they captured us at a very specific moment that has never, ever happened before and will never happen again. Like, making indie games isn't like that. Like, it isn't like that. What you're seeing in the movie, you're seeing 2 guys losing their minds because of the pressure that they're under. Like we were under so much pressure, and we've invested so much of our lives into this game, and so much money, so much time, and there was such a fine line between failure and success, and we didn't know if we would get either. Like, so what's going to happen? Like, we have no idea, and the pressure was just so great that we were killing ourselves on camera to finish it. And that doesn't necessarily represent making games. You know, there are times when you have to crunch, and you're losing your fucking mind. But for the most part, you'll look back at those memories and you'll think, I kicked ass. You know, I look back at Meat Boy and I don't necessarily think, oh my god, that was horrible. I'm starting to think now, we fucking kicked ass. Like, we fucking did it. Like, Tommy especially. Tommy fucking kicked ass. Like, he got that shit done. Like, he did amazing work. We did an amazing job, and we got rewarded for it. And, I mean, that's all I can say. Like, I love making games, and I don't count the hours. And I think that shows how much I really love it. And I honestly think majority of other developers feel the same way. I don't think anybody thinks about how many hours a day that they work, but I think most will say most of the hours. When I'm not working, I'm usually thinking, and it's basically work too. But when you're independent, like when you're independent and you put your life into it. Like, this is what I live. Like, I live games. And I don't know if that sounds super sad or not, but I'm having a good time doing it. But that's what I do. You know, I go to sleep thinking about games, and I wake up thinking about games. It's just what I was made to do and what I enjoy doing.
Well, I've had a great time interviewing Ed. Right before we wrap this up, I was going to ask you if you have any closing statements you'd like to say to anybody listening, like for news, updates.
Not really.
You're not going to mention the Basement Collection coming out next week?
Oh, yeah, I got a Basement Collection. It's coming out next week. 31st, Basement Collection comes out on Steam. It's going to be only $4. It's got 9 games in it and a lot of extra content. And it's basically there for the fans. Like, if you are interested in how I got where I am, you know, the stepping stones to Super Meat Boy and the Binding of Isaac, those are the biggest and most substantial stepping stones. And I think people will like it. I think it paints a good picture of kind of who I am, really. Kind of embodies the past 10 years of my life. So check it out for sure, or steal it or whatever.
Yeah, and to anybody listening, I'll have a review of that coming out shortly after it comes out. I'm looking forward to that, like, a lot. And I'll be doing news updates on the site for that too.
Sweet.
Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks for your time, Ed.
Thanks for having me on.